So how do actions impact us in a predetermined universe? I don't want to go through it elaborately, but the whole question of taking ownership of an act. When we commit an act, even though that act is something that is bound to occur and happen, at the level of the soul, taking ownership of that act immediately impacts the soul. If it is a good act, it impacts the soul positively. If it is a bad act, it impacts the soul negatively. So it is the inner being, the way it interacts with its own action. And that's why the Blessed Prophet said, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ, that the worth of deeds is measured through the intention or the intensity of the intention. So at times we might have not a wholesome intention, but we perform an act which is apparently good. That corrupts the soul further. At times, an act is committed that might not be something that is befitting a person, but the intention is quite noble, in which case the soul will not be affected negatively. And you know this, and you've been reading this in the du'as in the month of Ramadan, where Imam Zainul Abidin, and indeed, this is the way to approach God. He says, "Oh Allah, as I sit before you, pleading for forgiveness, I know in myself that I will continue sinning. And on so many occasions you have forgiven me, and I have sinned again. But he says, oh Allah, my sins have not been committed due to my lack of reverence of you. My sins have been committed due to my inadequacies and my weaknesses." So here you can see that is the thing that matters, the inner being. Of course, we need to reduce outer acts that are not befitting and not worthy. But the inner being is the one that is evolving towards God. Now, when we commit an act, when the inner being takes ownership of it, it makes us or breaks us. Because the inner being is affected by our mind, the way we think about things. And the judgment of God is immediate. There is no judgment that is postponed. The judgment is immediate. There are two types of judgments that we will talk about in a couple of days' time, I think, or either tomorrow. The judgment is immediate. When good is done, immediately there's a good impact. When an evil is done, immediately there's an evil impact. And you will see tomorrow, I feel, that God will say, or the Quran will say, you are the book. You are sufficient upon yourself as a witness today. You are your own accountability. Everything is happening inside you yourself. Your soul is becoming whatever you're making it. Now we come to this particular issue, that God has created 8 billion people on the face of this earth. What does God want to see from humanity? What vision did God have? It's a question, right? We are Muslims, others are people of other faiths, people of non-Abrahamic faiths, and people of no faith. Now here we often get caught up as faith communities in thinking that my faith is the best faith. That is not the case. There is no best faith. We might have a formalistically best faith, but it does not ensure us or guarantee us or does not assure us of inner success. The inner being, the way it interacts with situations, is what gives success or failure. It is not the formalistic faith. You may have a very fast sports car, but may not be able to drive it very fast. Somebody else may not have a very fast sports car and may be able to control the car and get there faster than you can. It's something like that. We may have a formally best religion, but that will not ensure or guarantee success, and may not even guarantee to the same level of success. Now this is where we want to take the discussion today. There's two levels. One is salvation. The other one is God's vision from humanity. So as far as the story of salvation is concerned, It is very individualistic, although tomorrow we will see it's in groups as well, but at the very core, it's individualistic. It all depends on the individual's relationship with God, the individual's flow towards God, and the individual's ability to relieve themselves of their own restrictions. Earlier on in life, obviously, I was always faced with these questions. Born in Uganda, living next door to Hindus, going and eating with them, early life education with them. The best friends I've had were Hindus. When they did their bhajan and whatever, we used to join them, eat their prasad, everything, nothing was wrong. Everything was fine. We didn't understand the meaning of their prayer. They didn't understand what Imam Hussain meant and what we were chanting. They were coming there, we were going there. Our moral system was the same. Our spiritual aspirations were the same. Going to England, encountering Islam, you incur biases in your mind. I'm a Muslim, I say, La ilaha illallah. These are Trinitarians, they are doing shirk and whatever, mushrik, and then you start feeling sorry for them that, oh my goodness, they're all going to hell. Has anybody else encountered this? Feeling so sorry for the rest of humanity? That you're all going to go to hell. And that's a good sentiment, because we feel for others. It's not a bad sentiment. But then there comes a time. I mean, I know Maulanas feel the same way about me, that, they're really paying for me. And God bless them for that. God really bless them for that. On that note, right, there was a person, what you call it, a traditional doctor. So on his route going to the village, there was a graveyard. So he would cover his face as he passed through the graveyard. So somebody asked him, you're a very wise man and you're a physician, obviously traditional doctor. Why do you cover your face? He said, all these people buried here, they got here after taking my medicine. On the day of Qiyamah, I'm going to be covered up. Don't look for me, right? So you come to a level where you say that man there is more righteous than I am in his behavior. He will not speak lies. He will not shout. He will not swear. He's a Hindu. That guy is a Christian. That guy is Jewish. In terms of pain for humanity, they give everything in charity, more than I do. They are not as insecure as I am, wealth insecure. In terms of helping other neighbors for the sake of God, they are far more active than I am. Why would I even assume that God has favored me and not the other person? That person, his God, is working more for him than my God is working for me. Now I'm going to tell you a story, another one here. Now you've heard this from me because I know all of you have been telling me you listen to my lectures. So I was in India, in Delhi, and it was time for Asr prayers. Do you see how I pass on subliminal messages that I pray Asr after I pray Dhuhr at separate times? Did you get it? Yeah, all right, you're awake. So I said to him, look, the time for Asr will elapse. Stop here, let me pray. So he said, this is a Hindu area and they're not friendly to Muslims. I said, just pull into this petrol station and I'll pray. So he pulled in. I went to the attendant and I said, I want to pray here. So he went and asked the owner. The owner came out. He said, I was waiting for you. I said, how come? He said, I'll tell you afterwards. So he gave me a bottle of water, a fresh bottle of water to do my wudu. This is how Maulanas waste time because they weren't prepared. They'll give you such a long prelude, it's so entertaining, they won't get through the substance after, but I've got a lot to get through today. So he gave me a fresh bottle of water, and then there was a section where they cleaned cars. So he gave me a fresh cloth. He said, use that as your prayer mat. So I prayed, and I went to thank him. He said, your prayer was accepted. I said, how come? He said, when you raised your hands to do dua, the clouds parted and the sun started shining. I said, I have that effect on nature. So I honestly had tears in my eyes. I said, I prayed for you. I actually prayed for you. He said, I was waiting for you. Because every time I would see number plate, it would say 786. Or I would count money, it would be 786. So I knew a Muslim was going to come today to my garage. I thought to myself, his idol allows him to let me worship my God in his place. He sacrifices water, cloth. Does my God allow me to allow him to pray in my house? Who is the bigger one here? Who is in a state of salvation and who is in a state of damnation? My Tawheed has brought me at a level where I feel sorry for him because he's going to burn in hell. And his faith has brought him to a level to embrace me as a light of God. When we look at it very carefully, the story of salvation is a different story altogether. And the Quran has been crying out about this reality. And we, in our pursuit of Islam, have begun to worship our own ego. As I said, we project our feeble image upon God, and then we devote to ourselves through the image of God. My God does not allow me to open up to humanity and to his creatures. His God allows him to open up to one and all. Obviously, he's closer to God than I can ever be. Now, if you look at the story of salvation, it is nothing to do with race, nothing to do with ethnicity, nothing to do with status, nothing to do with gender. Beyond it all, as the Quran cries out, it's nothing to do with religion. It is to do with that untarnished state of fluidity through which we flow to God and remove obstacles, remove barriers to allow ourselves to let Allah emerge fully the light of God. As he feeds a Muslim mouth, so he feeds a Hindu mouth. Would God be God if he favored a Muslim above a Hindu? Would God remain God? The creator of white is the creator of black. The creator of Christianity is the creator of Islam. He is not white, he is not black, he is not Muslim, he is not Christian. He is not male, he is not female, he is not young, he is not old. He is none of these things, and yet he is all of these beautiful things. Until and unless soul emerges at that level of brilliance and beauty, the soul has not made it. Salvation entails removal of all barriers, all biases, all likes, all dislikes. Of course, at a bodily level, we have to have rules and regulations governing us. We have to have them. There is a John in the camp of Hussain. We are told he is a slave of Hussain. He enters into the battlefield, takes off his coat of mail, throws it, takes off his shirt, face the chest of a lover of Hussain, who brings his chest as a shield to take your arrows. Are you mad, O man? They cry. Indeed, I have become insane in the love of my Hussain. The love of my Hussain has driven me to insanity. There is Wahab, who doesn't know Islam. He's a Christian. He doesn't even understand Tawheed. Today, he stands as an icon for us. Hussain did not care less about religions. There was another truth that was emerging. So salvation is individualistic. Now, if you look at this in terms of the people of the book, the Quran does not give a superior position to the believers or the Jews and the Christians and the Sabians. It refuses, adamantly refuses. Indeed, the people who have brought faith, who are the followers of the Prophet Muhammad, the Jews, the Christians, the Sabians, whoever amongst them is directed to God and performs righteous deeds. So yesterday we stated, direction to God is surrender to Him. Surrender to the untarnished beauty. And righteous deeds are a means to relieve ourselves of our restrictions and to increase our inner expanse. The constriction is broken. Righteous deeds means that. It does not mean a prayer and a fast. It means what comes before the prayer and the fast, and during the prayer and the fast, and after the prayer and the fast. The Prophet said, if your prayer does not make you a better person, that prayer has not been accepted because you have not moved to God. What does becoming a better person mean? Removal of hatred, removal of greed, removal of jealousy, right? Increase of charity, increase of forgiveness. That is the meaning of better. You know, we pray 100 rakat namaz I've led so many 100 rakat namaz, by the way, and I've noticed my blood pressure just shoots up. And my family say, please, for God's sakes, just pray 10 rakat and leave it. Namaz is only valid if it refines the soul. If you meet with the beloved, if in that prostration the heart melts, we get a share of light. That is when a good deed is good deed. How awful is the state of this human soul who wants his God to forgive him but cannot forgive others. Imagine. Who says his is the king of the whole universe and provides for him, yet he finds it so difficult to dig into his pocket and donate. On that note, I don't know, they haven't put it up today, but we want to get it to 100,000 because they need AV equipment and whatever else they need to, you can see they're not very well, the AV, sorry about that. But they need to invest heavily, yes, in proper equipment. So just get it to 100,000 on that note. Yes, and in the name of Imam Hussain. You know what? I'm not saying it that if you give, Allah will give you more, Allah will not give you anything. Let's get that right. If you give, you will give for the name of your beloved. And you will incur his light. You will procure his light. There is no reward more than that. Don't give to Allah to say, give me 70 times more. Say to Allah, I give to you and I thank you. Thank you. With that spirit. So now, the Quran says in two places, in Baqarah, as the Prophet enters Medina and encounters a multi-faith community, and in Nisa, which is much later, Islam has advanced considerably. Again, the same verse has been repeated. That look, the Jews, the Christians, the faithful, and the Sabians, whoever directs themselves to God, brings faith in God, the hereafter, and performs righteous deeds, they will have their reward and they will have no fear. And do you know what this is gesturing at? On the day of Qiyamah, everybody will be trembling except for the friends of God. They will have no fear and no grief. God is giving this assurance to the people of Abrahamic faiths. Then again, if you see Surah Nisa, there were a group of Muslims boasting over Jews, and the Jews boasting over Christians, and the Christians boasting over the Muslims and the Jews. And these verses come. It is not your wishful thinking, O Muslims, and neither is it the wishful thinking of the people of the book. If you do evil, you will be recompensed with evil. And he who does righteous deeds, be they male or female, then they will enter into paradise. Now look at the last verse. And who is best in their religion? And this is a universal verse, yes? Who is best in religion? Then the one who surrenders his all to Allah. And he is a doer of good. And he is a doer of good. And then the verse omits the mention of Prophet Muhammad, Prophet Jesus, and Prophet Musa, and follows the creed of Abraham. At once he is removing the superiority complexes and notions from the Abrahamic faiths. It has nothing to do with Prophet Muhammad, Prophet Jesus, Prophet Moses. It's all to do with Abraham, and you're all equally belonging to Abraham. Look at these verses. God is not concerned about your religion, and we'll go through that. Inshallah, we'll find the time to finish it. Then in terms of humanity. Now this verse, although it came earlier, but I feel it came later and was then placed in an earlier surah, and I need to double check this. يا أيها الناس إنا خلقناكم من ذكر وأنثى وجعلناكم شعوبا وقبائل لتعارفوا أن أكرمكم عند الله أتقاكم. Now, Quran has a particular way of speaking. When it wants to address the believers, it says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, O you who have brought faith. If it wants to address the Muslims, Ya ayyuhal muslimun. If it wants to address the people of the book, it will say, Ya ahlal kitab. If it wants to address humanity in its entirety, it will say, Ya ayyuhan nas, O humankind. Check the Quran. O humankind, we have created you from a single male and a female. And we have made you into tribes and nations so that by mutual interaction, you begin to realize that the most proximate of you with God is the one who is most God-like. So these differences that you have in religions and in cultures and ethnicities and races and statuses are arbitrary distinctions. In there is the same reality. And that same reality has the same direction. And that same direction is the one in which you free yourself and you liberate yourself. And as you liberate yourself, you become more God-like. And that is the meaning of proximity with God. No Hindu is preferred over a Muslim, and no Muslim is preferred over a Jew. One and all are the same. Your textbook might be the latest version, but his textbook is one that he has read fully, and he has passed better than you. No textbook will guarantee that we arrive at salvation. Any textbook, provided it is God-centered, can bring about salvation. This is the broad understanding that Islam gives. Now, if anybody is in any difference about this, and I'm sorry I have to conduct this lecture today, in a verse in Surah, I've forgotten which surah, I haven't quoted the surah name, but anyway, لَكُلٍّ جَعَلْنَا مِنْكُمْ شِرْعَةً وَمِنْهَاجًا. For all you groups, we have made Sharia and we've made methods, paths. وَلَوْ شَاءَ اللَّهُ لَجَعَلَكُمْ أُمَّةً وَاحِدًا. And if Allah wanted, He would have made you into one group, one people. وَلَكِنْ لَيَبْلُوَكُمْ فِي مَا آتَاكُمْ. But Allah wanted to test you in terms of what He has given you. So He has kept you different, given you all different Sharias. For what end? فَاسْتَبِقُوا الْخَيْرَاتِ. Now compete against each other in doing utmost good. And you will see from the verses we'll quote tomorrow that God will say, then I will explain to you in what you differed in. I kept you different for a particular reason. The inner being's evolution to me was equal for one and all. Your bodies were different, your groupings were different. And the only reason they were kept different was so that there may be within the bodily realm healthy competition. Healthy competition in what? Healthy competition in serving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and serving humanity. That was the whole cause of it all according to the Quran. I've made you Hindu, Muslim, whatever I've made you, because you operate best in limited groups and you compete with each other and you produce highest good in that way through challenges. That was my whole aim. Your inner beings are all equally available to me, God says. All of you will have salvation. I am not barring myself from anyone. But your outer bodily existences are there for a particular reason to increase utmost good. Now, the Quran expects us, people of different faith, to work with each other on that common principle of God centricity. So the Prophet is told in Surah Al Imran to say to the people of the book, come, let us gather together on that which is common between us, that we will not worship other than God and we will not associate with God. On the basis of God centricity, the Quran is saying, work with each other. What does God centricity mean? Does it mean we give lip service, there is no God but one God? God centricity means whatever God represents to us of perfection, that commonality is between all of us. What does God centricity mean? Give life, dispel ignorance, give health, sacrifice for each other. That is the meaning of God centricity. Become like God, forgive, create a better humanity. Let us come together on the basis of worship of one God. And what does worship of one God entail? Doing sajda, going around the Kaaba. These are the formalistic aspects of the body. But what does God centricity mean in terms of the essence? To do God's work within humanity. What is the work of God in humanity? He is the nurturer. He is Rahman. He is Rahim. Nurture humanity. Educate humanity. Dispel the calamities from humanity. Bring about a just social order within humanity. Care for the oppressed. And at the same time, have empathy for the oppressor. Because the oppressor is a part of our humanity. And until and unless the oppressor is healed, we will not stop producing oppressors. So that was the way in which Quran was looking at the whole issue of humanity. Now, if you look at the Quran, something has happened within the deep past of humanity. And the Quran points us to that. Now, if humanity comes to a pedestal of harmonious coexistence, we can dispel all harm from humanity. You see, we have not understood ourselves. We feel we are subjected to what the earth is doing to us. What we don't understand is that we are the agents who are agitating the earth. And the earth is responding in a like manner. ظهر الفساد في البر والبحر بما كسبت أيدي الناس. Corruption has spread upon land and sea due to what man's hands have earned. Now think about these things very, very carefully. When we are in a state of calm, the world becomes calm, doesn't it? When we are agitated, the world is agitated. And no one knows this more than I do. Whenever I'm rushing to get somewhere, the traffic lights are always red. There's always an old woman wanting to cross the road. And of course you have to stop because it's an old woman. If it's an old man, it's a different issue. Every time a driver wants to pass and you have to stop, it's a calamity. When you're agitated, the world is evil. When you're calm, everybody is a loving being. Collectively, if humanity can arrive at a state of calm from within, we can actually diffuse the tensions within the world. We are filled with so much fear and anxiety that we compound and generate more fear and anxiety. As we generate more fear and anxiety, the world becomes more chaotic. It responds in a like manner. If we are calm, the world becomes calm. We are actually the authors of the state of the world. It's not the other way around. We have been imprisoned with this ego through anxiety, through fear. Where does fear come from? From ego's insecurity. I want to retain myself the way I am. Things are not happening the way I want them to happen. And hence this chaos from within. And we build and compound it. And the whole world runs on the basis of fear, anxiety, and ego. But imagine if human community can become God-centered. We are leaving it to God. He feeds the little creatures crawling upon the earth. He feeds those creatures within the stars. He feeds microscopic creatures within my own body. Will He abandon me? Imagine if we can liberate ourselves from our fears and anxiety. How humanity can calm down and calm the whole world down. Look at that beautiful prayer of Imam Hussain. And it's pertinent to quote him. That, "O Allah, in the womb of my mother, I was unworthy of mention. Yet you fashioned me. And when you brought me out into this world, you ensured that my sustenance awaited in her bosom. Before you gave me teeth, you assured that my food would be waiting for me. Oh Allah, the one who has taken care of me so well in my yesterday when I could not think, will you abandon me in my tomorrow if my tomorrow is destined? Doesn't that make sense? That if tomorrow is destined, will God abandon us? So you see, this retention of ego, this insecurity that we have, that is the problem at hand. God centricity, directedness to God means to give it up. Give up this struggle. Free ourselves. But the Quran says, humanity was one people. Then they became different and split. And the greatest calamity upon us is this unity within humanity. Now we're working our way towards unity in humanity by creating the Charter of Human Rights and so on and so forth, international institutions to rid lack of education and poverty and so on and so forth, and United Nations. These are good steps in the right direction. Whether we like it or not, we are reclaiming our unity. And this process needs to be accelerated. But in our minds, if we can just become open, a little bit open, and say that no, we can embrace humanity, we have our own way, they have their own way in terms of religion, but essentially we are one and the same. We need to be working together and doing the same thing. Now, the Quran has always wanted to create singular humanity. You see, we say when we go to Mecca, no Muslims allowed. You know this, right? Non-Muslims can't go to Mecca. Recently, obviously, they've relaxed the laws for going into Medina, but initially even Medina would not have non-Muslims going there. So now they're saying, well, the people of the book can go to Medina, and of course, Prophet did not keep his wives outside Medina. He had Jewish wives and a Christian wife, right? Even if they converted, which I don't believe they did, a couple of them, we can't find any trace of it. But initially when he married them, he brought them into Medina, right? Now think about this. Think about how we have failed. Think about this. Abraham builds the Kaaba. In Surah Hajj, Allah commands Abraham, وَأَذِّن فِي النَّاسِ بِالْحَجِّ. Abraham, call on to people to come for Hajj. There was no Muslim at that point. يَأْتُوكَ رِجَالًا وَعَلَى كُلِّ ضَامِرٍ. They will come walking to you and upon every means. So then somebody says, after Islam the law came in. Look at the verse of Hajj that makes Hajj an obligation. لِلَّهِ عَلَى النَّاسِ حِجُّ الْبَيْتِ لِمَنِ اسْتَطَاعَ إِلَيْهِ سَبِيلًا. Allah has a right upon mankind to perform Hajj. Can you see that? There is no mention of Muslim there. It is something for mankind as a whole. Turn to one focal point and you are united in the broadest culture. So spiritually, you all have equal shot at salvation, equal opportunity at salvation. And in terms of the body, you are all one being. That is what God wants from humanity. He does not want all this that we are doing. And that is why the Prophet Muhammad was so broad. He said to the people of the book, come, let us be together. When he constructed the Charter of Medina, he did not bar the people of Medina who are non-Abrahamic. He got them all together. That is how broad they were. Now read the verses of Kaaba. You'll have 5 odd verses. 1 or 2 of them will have the house of God, but every verse, to the best of my recollection, says the first house made for mankind was the one in Bakka. And then Mathabatan linnas wa amna. Verse upon verse is talking about Kaaba being house for mankind as a whole. It is nothing to do with Muslims. So the destiny that God sees for humanity is one in which humanity is one singular body. And what God wants at an individual level within humanity is that each and every one of His creatures makes their path towards Him. Now this was the broad view that God has given us within the Quran. It's our failure that we don't actually read it And I'm going to say this once again, and I want to celebrate a very renowned person on this night, so I don't want to take too long. It is nothing but our ego that has interpreted Islam. Quran is saying one thing, we are reading another thing. You know, when you wear spectacles that are colored, you see everything in that color. You don't see things as they are. We have these biases in our chests. Through that bias, when we read the Word of God, it becomes as distorted as we are. We need to understand what God is saying from God's perspective. Now, when you go to Dar es Salaam and other places and you take out the procession of Hazrat Abbas, you get Hindus coming. And you say to the Hindus, what does he mean to you? He said, well, he is no less than our Bhagwan. We venerate him, his bravery, the way he gave himself over, the way he defiantly stood in front of the blades. He is as much ours as he is yours. These are the beautiful qualities that are the essence within us all. This great man, it is said about him in his description, كَالْجَبَلِ الْعَظِيمِ وَقَلْبَهُ كَطَوْدِ الْجَسِيمِ. He was like a lofty mountain with a momentous heart. He was a warrior within the battlefield and fearless within the ranks of the enemies. Amidst the showering arrows, he would tear apart the ranks of the enemies. This is about Abbas ibn Ali. When I narrate the incident of Karbala, it is not about authenticity of this and that and details. It is about the hearts paying tribute to the Lord of the heart. And Abbas is no less than the Lord of our hearts. So Bashir arrives into Medina. Ya ahla Yathraba, O people of Medina, la muqama lakum biha. There is no place for you in Medina. Hussain has been killed. An old woman, I hear from narrators, silence Bashir. This cannot be the case. Yes, maid of God, Abbas, Hussain has been killed. Where was my Abbas? Your Abbas was killed. How can anybody overpower my Abbas? His arms were cut by treachery and then he fell to the earth. I said, Abbas, if your sword remained in your hands, no one would have dared approach to Hussain. So there is a bit of a story that in the last century, because Abbas's grave is within the basement and it became waterlogged and it got damaged. So a builder went there with Sayyid Bahrul Ulum in the time of Sayyid Bahrul Ulum. And as he fixed the grave, he looked towards Bahrul Ulum. He said, "Oh master, if it is not audacious, may I ask you something?" He said, "Indeed." He said, "Do you not say in the description of Abbas that his stature was so lofty and grand that as he would ascend his steed, his feet would touch the ground?" He said, "Yes, Abbas was like that." He said, "Then why is his grave so small?" He said, فَقَطَّعُوهُ إِرْبًا إِرْبًا. They cut him into pieces. Imam Sadiq says, "Inna ammi al-Abbas kana nafidul basira sulbul iman." My uncle Abbas had a penetrative insight into affairs and was staunch of faith. And he said again that my uncle Abbas has such a rank with God that the prophets will be envious on the day of Qiyamah, looking at the rank of Abbas. Amongst other things, he was known as Qamar Bani Hashim, Hamilul Liwa, the bearer of the standard of Hussain, Saqqa, the one who quenched the thirst of the thirsty ones, Abul Fadl, the father of Fadl. In the battle of Siffin, Abbas may have been 13. Now at single combat, the Arab warriors would call their equal into battlefield. When Ali would go, Salamullah alayhi, nobody would face him through the fear that this is Ali. So Ali would go with his face covered with the face mask so that they wouldn't recognize him and they would send an equal. Imam Ali sent Abbas with a face covering. A warrior came from the other side. Effortlessly, Abbas put him to death. There was commotion in the army camp. This is Ali, he's deceiving you. Approach him not. As they were talking during this commotion, Imam Ali came towards Abbas and he unveiled the face of Abbas. And the historians quote as if the full moon was emerging from behind the dark clouds. And he said, Ana Ali ibn Abi Talib wa hadha qamar bani Hashim Abbas. That this is the luminous moon, the full moon of the Hashimis, Abbas. So we find this description that every time a warrior from the side of Hussain would be killed, there would be cries of jubilation. And Shimar would ask, who was that? And they would say, such and such. And Shimar would say, does Abbas still live? When Abbas fell at the Alqamah, there were cries of joy. Shimar said, who has fallen? They said, Abbas has fallen. There was a smile on his face. He says, now Hussain will surrender. Now Hussain will not live. Abbas is patrolling the tents from the rear side so that the enemies may not attack. Zuhair again goes to him. He says, Abbas, do you know why your father sought you? Abbas said, Zuhair, it is a sensitive moment, but you have mentioned the name of my father. In reverence to my father, I will pause. What is it that you wish to speak? He said, Abbas, your father sought you for a day like this. He said, you wish to incite me, Zuhair? Away with you. This was Abbas. The day extends itself towards the evening. Hussein's faithful have fallen. Hussein's sons have died. Abbas comes to Hussain. He says, dear brother, allow me to go, for I cannot tolerate your state. Hussain looks at Abbas, says, بِنَفْسِ أَنْتَ يَا Abbas. May my life be given for you, O Abbas. إِذَا مَضَيْتَ فَرَّقْتَ بَيْنَ عَسْكَرِي. Abbas, if you go, the morale of my army will break. Abbas said, what army, O Hussain? None remains but you and I. They were talking. There were cries from the tent. Abbas, take news. Maybe a child has died through thirst. Abbas goes where the water is kept and finds little children rubbing the water skins upon their bellies. He takes a water skin and he says, children, I will bring back some water for you. He comes to Hussain carrying a water skin. He says, oh brother, allow me to fetch back some water for them. Hussain knows what is happening. He looks deep into the eyes of Abbas as if to bid him farewell. Then he kisses Abbas's forehead. Abbas looks towards the sky and says, oh Allah, allow me to bring back some water. Abbas on his steed and Hussain with him, they ride towards the Alqamah. The enemy's mountain attack. They separate. Abbas turns back, says, oh Hussain, retreat, retreat, go back to the tents. Abbas makes his way to the Alqamah. He wards off their blows, enters within the Alqamah, cups water in his hand and lifts it. and says, Ya nafsu, with ba'dil Hussain huni. O soul, surrender to that. It is not befitting for you to live after Hussain. This is your Hussain dying with thirst. Shall you consume of the cold water? He throws the water and says, Wallah, ma hada fi'alu dini. By Allah, Abbas's religion does not allow him such a thing. Abbas emerges from the Alqama, fights them, carrying the water skin. And we are told the standard is with Abbas. An enemy from behind a tree strikes at Abbas's right arm. At that, Abbas cries out, Wallah, law qata'atum yamini, inni abadan wahami an dini. By Allah, even if you were to sever my right hand, I will not cease to defend my religion and my Imam. Abbas goes forward. His left arm is cut. O soul, fear not. They have severed your left arm, but take glad tidings of the mercy of Allah. Abbas still sits on the back of his horse, trying to make way towards the tent. 2 arrows are released. One penetrates his blessed eye, and the other one, the water skin. As Abbas sees this, he stops. The Maqatil say they surround him and they start hacking Abbas. The horse carries him to a distance and Abbas falls. As Hussain hears the cries from the Alqama, he says, Allah, al-an inkasara dhahri wa qallat hilati. Now my back is broken and my means have become severed. He ascends his steed, Zuljana. Take me to my Abbas. Zuljana rides. He stops at a place. Hussain dismounts. Zuljana, where is my Abbas? And instead he finds the severed arm of Abbas. He calls out, Wa Abbas. And then he sees Abbas at a distance. He goes to Abbas, sits next to him. As he lifts the head of Abbas, Abbas says, Oh man, wait for a while. Allow my brother to come to me before you sever my head. It is I, your brother, O Abbas. I cannot see you, O Hussain. Hussain cleanses the wound from Abbas's face and eyes. Tears flood Abbas's eyes. Oh brother, what brings grief to your heart? He said, Oh Hussain, how may I not grieve when I see you lifting my head from the dust, and I know after me you will be killed on a brutal thirst, and there will be no one to lift your head. Hussain clasps the head of Abbas against his chest and cries out aloud. The scene is this, that the enemies begin to cry. He says, now you cry after taking my Abbas from me? Hussain tries to move Abbas. Abbas says, Oh brother, what is it that you intend to do? I will take you back to your sister, O Abbas. Hussain, let me be. Zainab will not be able to tolerate this scene. And what shall I say to your daughters who wait for their uncle to bring water? Abbas breathes his last. Hussain leaves Abbas. And the Zakirin report and narrate that he carried the standard of Abbas as he made way for the tents. Zainab, Kulthum, and the children run towards Hussain. Sakina asks, Oh father, where is my uncle? He lies lifeless at the Alqama. Zainab says, Hussain, why did you not bring my brother back to me? He said, Oh Zainab, he was mindful of you at his last breath. She slaps her face and says, Wa Abbas. Fatiha.